Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Nowadays, India and its judiciary, the government and judiciary, are on a course that can result in a collision. And the latest matter that's going to cause this is the desire of the LGBTQ community to get their unions recognized as formal marriages, which the government of India refuses to accept. And it's not only the government, but politicians, the cultural leaders, the community leaders, all are against that. In the latest submission, the government of India told the Supreme Court in very clear terms that it opposes the very concept of same-sex marriage because these marriages would not be compatible with the Indian family unit. And it goes on to say that distinct classes cannot be treated identically. Now the executive, there's the government, and the legislative parliament views are absolutely informed, but not because of the pertaining woke revolution globally, but by the traditionalism and conservatism of the Indian society. Now the problem is twofold. On the one side is a question of the fundamental rights of these LGBTQ community. And those fundamental rights, with or without popular endorsement, have to be upheld. But you cannot deny that the manifestation of a family unit as perceived by the people deserves sanctity as well. Marriage is a union of two beings and traditionally is between man and a woman, becoming father and mother and the children. The new way of addressing the parents as being done in USA is parent 1, parent 2. Apart from that it doesn't gel with the common people. I'm talking of Indian society or Pakistan society. What about the children, which is being noticed here, even in Canada or in USA? There's a parent-teacher meeting, and I saw it. That one child came with his male mother, the other came with a female father. And he was practically jeered at, and a cat called were there. Other children were amazed when he said, "She is my father, and he is my mother." There are certain inherited values that the woke revolution cannot efface, cannot remove. Now, parts of the world undoubtedly have legally enshrined marriage equality. At some places, even the religious leaders have accepted it. They are buckled. But amazingly, extremely religious countries like Ireland had to legalize same-sex marriage after a referendum. The majority opinion has swung in places like Australia and US. Taiwan courts have legalized it. And even in Japan, although same-sex marriage remains illegal, nationally, 256 municipalities and dozen odd prefectures have partnership oath systems. So they take an oath that they are partners, not about marriage. Other jurisdictions that have held off legalizing the same-sex marriage, what they do is allow registered civil unions or domestic partnerships. Now, that does not need a religious validation. So the religious sanctity to the marriage is not there. But Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism can never accept it. Now, the religious validation may not be there, but the rights and the responsibilities of a legal couple are there. What are they? To be a hospital bedside, to have and raise children. Now, to have means to adopt. Two males or two females cannot produce a child. So either it's surrogate pregnancy or adoption. But they can own and inherit assets, operated bank account, and can be counted as a family in matters of tax, immigration, and they can also qualify for the spouse's code, get employment benefit, and so on. Now, these civil unions are the ideal way out for the demand of the LGBT community in India as well. Because these unions can be applied to anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of gender, and they are more popular than the traditional marriages in places like France and Northern Europe. This is what Indian courts and judicial and lawmakers should seriously study. Supreme Court can say, well, they can have a legal union. Yes, there's no problem with that. Why stress on the word marriage? And if Supreme Court does that, it will be responsible for the social chaos. And that has to be avoided. In fact, the politicians of all views are discomfited by the notion of a queer marriage. And those rightly demand the marriage can see this civil union as a step forward in their desire to live together and have all the legal sanction. Now, India has a special marriage act, and it's a civil law that operates outside the Muslim personal law and the Hindu marriage act. No religious community's personal law is affected by the civil marriage act. And there can be no argument against the fact that this law allows all classes of citizens the right to marry. But the stifling social conservatism is a reality that no politician can ignore. You cannot call it a marriage and then hope to win elections in India, at least, or in Pakistan even. Therefore, the best idea would be to start with civil unions. And not just for the queer couples, why only for LGBT community? As a matter of fact, this is a time that the Supreme Court intervenes in favor of heterosexual couples as well. For example, live-in concept, which is becoming very popular. If that can be converted into a civil union, So the objection of the society that they are living in sin would be removed. The youth is changing. The world is changing. You cannot have the concepts of the hoary past applicable everywhere. Change is a law of nature. And the queers, the lesbians, the homosexuals, LGBT, all have a right. It's a fundamental right to live with a person, to love a person you want, and to live with a person you want. But to have a family, you have to depend on outside. So that's why the union word, then they cannot, the next problem is going to be the father and the mother. That in US experiment of calling it parent one and parent two is going to be very, very laughable in the subcontinent of India and Pakistan. Let me tell you. People would simply make fun of the kids and they will become psychic cases. They will develop inferiority complex. This social stigma, despite the woke revolution, beside all the good talk of liberty, equality, fundamental rights is fine. But the real situation is going to be very tough. Therefore, it's high time. Now, many times, Supreme Court has intervened in heterosexual couples. So civil unions are an ideal way to satisfy the whims and the desire of any two people. I'm not saying only those belong to LGBT, but any two people. If they want a legal basis for their relationship, let it be accepted as civil union and give it a legal sanctity. But don't call it a marriage. The moment you call it a marriage, then the religious, the cultural undertones become prevalent and prevail over all rights. The propagation of love jihad in India, for example, is because of that. So the whole thing has to be seen in a perspective not of the law, not in the light of the freedom and the fundamental rights, but as something which is a human issue, and ingenuous, innovative ways have to be found to solve the issue. To my mind, this Japanese experiment is extremely pertinent because culturally, people in India are deadly against the marriage of the LGBT community. The word marriage, union, nobody will object. And then you give it a legal sanction. So you will be, in fact, be one step ahead of Japan because it will be on all India basis. There is only a few prefectures, as I said, a dozen prefectures and couple of hundred districts. So you are circumventing it. This is a compromise that should satisfy the die-hard conservatives and the couples that want to love and live together. They have a right to live. Nobody can deny it. They have a right to live with a person who they want. But to live as a family may not be acceptable to millions of the Indians. Let's be very honest. 70% village population would not accept it. no religious sanction would be there. There would be catastrophe of values. But this union will take care of all that, and that's the way out of this muddle that is being created. Supreme Court hasn't applied its mind properly. As a matter of fact, they should have studied what's happening all over the world. And then instead of going into confrontation, suggested this to the government in its judgment, and the government would automatically have accepted it because they also don't want to annoy these voters. So you need a pragmatic solution, and this is the pragmatic solution I'm offering. Thank you.